Your Creative Push, episode 158.
Do what you can to demystify the creative process.
That's like sort of our mantra is stop talking about it, stop wishing, and put in the work.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and today's episode is part 2 of my conversation with Ryniak and Amanda Louise Spayd. If you missed yesterday's episode, part 1 of my conversation, head to yourcreativepush.com/157 or just scroll back in your podcast player. If you tuned in yesterday, you know how inspiring of a conversation it's already been, and I promise you more good things to come, so I will shut up and get right back into the interview. Hope you enjoy. I was wondering, aside from the kind of creative blocks that we talked about earlier, are there any other things that kind of hold you back from creating on a daily basis?
I'm a perfectionist, for sure. And I know that there comes a point where that, people are like, oh, well, that means you have really high quality control and really high standards. But what it really comes down to is that it's kind of this narcissistic fear of failure, and it really keeps me from doing a lot of stuff. So I'm trying to squash that as much as I can.
And how do you squash that?
Actually, the more I have embraced the F it moment, deadlines really help, because there comes a point sometimes where you can only do the best that you can do, and that literally like physics cannot bend. Time cannot bend to accommodate your wishes for this project. You just have to get it done to the best that you can. And you reach this moment where you're like, well, there it is. That's what I have, and I have to be okay with it. And then you find out later, usually most 99% of the time, it's totally fine. But what your perfectionism is telling you is that you have these ridiculously high standards for yourself that nobody else cares about. We remind each other that all the time. Is anybody else but you going to notice this? Is anybody else but you going to notice that shade of turquoise that the paint turned into when it dried is 2 shades off of what you intended?
Oh, I did notice that actually on that, what you're talking about.
You're the one. You're that 1%.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that, and I know that's a really extreme example, but doing it, having to turn it in when you have to turn it in, that will help. It'll help get you used to not that you're lowering your standards, but that you're accepting that you're not a machine.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of like we were talking about before with the morning sketches, it's you'll never put content out if you're
exactly.
too perfect about your even though, like you guys were saying, they're a part of you. They're you actually care about their kind of emotionality, and they're your children almost. It's still important to birth them, to get them out there. And you're right, deadlines help, and I love that, the F it moment.
The real thing too is that what's better, nothing or something?
Something.
So I guess, even I have to remind myself that all the time. It's better just to have something, even if that Instagram post isn't the, perfectly well curated, well cleaned up Photoshop image that you want. Just put something out there. People want to see it. They want to see what you have to offer. Show them. There, I'm pep talking myself right now.
Good job.
Yeah.
Go team.
Go team. How about you, Chris?
I think the thing that holds me back, and it's interesting because it kind of coincides with what Amanda was saying about deadlines, is the thing that holds me back the most is that there is not enough time to do all the things that I want to do. I have so many ideas and so many projects in my mind from one day to the next where I'm sort of spontaneous when it comes to projects. I'll say, well, I have this idea. And if it involves me emailing somebody and finding something out, I'll email them right away. Or if I have an idea for a sculpture, I'll try to start on it that day. And I get a lot of projects going all at once. The way that I try to combat the futility of time, aside from, I try to stop at a certain time every day. I want to have a normal day, and I don't want to work all night. I try to just break things down into small chunks. That way, eventually all those bricks will form a wall, and then you'll have a body of work. And just like the morning scribbles, I never thought I'd be talking about it today, and there's 1,000 of them.
Right.
It's a lot, and I'm assembling a book right now, and just looking through them all, it's like, well, I've done so many, and you can approach everything like that. Every small thing can lead up to a huge body of work, or a huge piece. And I think that's just how I combat it. But it is hard. It's hard to juggle like all these ideas, and I kind of drive Amanda crazy a lot because I'm always like full of new ideas. Like, what if we do this? What if we do this? Hey, what if we do this?
What if is like it's like our motto. What if this happened? What if you could do this? What about this?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think it's a good mentality, and I really respect that, because the way this podcast started was I just bought a microphone and hit record and then just published that as episode 0.
That's awesome.
But I think it's really important to do that. But what happens then when you are spinning too many plates, Chris? Like when you have too many, you send out too many emails, you started too many projects. Do you abandon some of them, or
stress
do you
and swearing?
Yeah,
first.
you get a little stressed out on things, and things don't get, some things don't get the attention that they should. But, luckily, with the way that we're doing things, only some things have finite, deadlines, where if it's like, I have an edition of figures that I want to put out, I can decide when that's going to happen. And sometimes they just have to get pushed back a little further, and the things that have hard deadlines, that's where, priorities come into play. So if we have a show coming up or a convention coming up, we know when those dates are. So you do what you can for those dates, and you hit those things, but everything else is like, it'll happen.
Domestic house projects never get finished. We've needed to paint the basement stairs for like 3 years, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So.
For me, it's like, in terms of creativity, it's drawing first and everything else after. But, sort of descending priority order based on deadlines.
Well, I think a lot of people do the opposite. They switch it up, and they push off the creative thing like till later. They'll finish all the household chores, because I think a lot of times it's actually because they're afraid of the creative process, because it's so much of putting yourself out there, whereas painting the basement is simple.
Right. It's just mechanical,
right? And I think the thing is, like, everything is as important as you decide it is, really. I mean, we have people that live around us who have beautiful lawns and beautiful landscaping because they've decided to put all their time into that.
Ours is good enough.
Ours looks pretty okay. It's like you drive by it and you wouldn't even notice there was a house there. But it's not like, whoa, boy, there's a rusted out car parked in the front and the lawn's 2 feet long. But
we could trim the hedges a little.
Yeah,
more,
we could do a little better. But like that's not our focus, and it doesn't have to be our focus. You just decide, you kind of just decide what's important to you, and think about, like, when you get to the end of your life, are you going to think, boy, I am glad I spent all those weekends trimming my hedges? Or are you going to think about, like, boy, I spent my time doing the thing that I wanted to do and contributing to the world what only I could have? That's more important, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I think you nailed it. I think that's what life comes down to, whether it's a creative endeavor or not. It is really deciding, like looking 80 years in the future when you are on your deathbed, or maybe less years, or maybe more years, who knows? But, and just kind of thinking that exact question it's what am I happy that I spent my time on, and what am I really disappointed that I spent my time on? And I think that if people look inside of themselves, they'll realize that, yes, the creative thing is something that not only are you enjoying your time, but you're, like you said, able to put something out into the universe, which is a really rare gift. And I think it's the most important thing, though.
And it's valuable. Like your ideas are valuable. Your time and your skill is valuable. Get it out there.
And we're living in a really awesome time that people who, without the internet would have never had a voice, and really unlikely people have put out some really amazing things that you would have never heard of that are now, household names. That should be empowering to people, I think. The fact that, like, you do have access, and do try and fail. Like, just put it out there and see what happens. And I think that's like sort of our mantra is, like, stop talking about it and stop wishing and put in the work.
I couldn't agree more. So before we get to the final push, I was wondering, what do your creatures mean to you, and what would your life be like without them?
Oh, man.
Oh, God. I'd be in such good shape Like, I'd be so obsessive over exercising.
Mm-hmm.
So are they your outlet for obsession?
Yeah, in a way, because I think I'm sort of obsessive.
No.
Yeah, I think. I mean, like what I was saying before, what they mean to me is you know, I do have, and it's coming into focus more what I think my purpose is in terms of, you know, it's a self-defining purpose, but I think I'm becoming more and more comfortable with the fact that I have a lot of things to say about a lot of things, just like everybody. Everybody's got an opinion about politics and life and how to do business and how to do your work and all this stuff. That's great. Everybody's got a million opinions. People, boy, do people share them, you know,
right,
all over the place. I don't want to be a yet another contributor to the endless bucket full of commentary. What I want to do is give people a break for a second to look at something that might make them smile in an otherwise dismal day or just a normal day, you know, and that's, you know, it helps for me. It helps for me to come up with those concepts. It helps for me to think that these things might be a little bigger than me. I mean, the fact that even one person sees them and one person connects to them is bigger than me, you know, but the fact that it's reaching, you know, almost 70,000 people on Instagram at this point, you know, that's still not gigantic, but it's more than I could fit on the block that I live in. Like, you know, like that's a lot of people, and
it's more people than you'll ever meet in your life.
Yeah, and I feel like I people are, you know, there's people that if they started looking at these drawings when they were 4 years old, they're 8 years old now, and they've like lived part of their lives with these things, and it's becoming like part of them and part of what they do, and I have a responsibility to uphold that, and I'm okay with that. Like, I'm super stoked about that. Like, that's awesome. There's some importance to what I'm doing. So that's what they mean to me, and I don't ever want to betray my own characters and betray the people that are enjoying them, and I just want to keep seeing what else I can do. What's possible? What other type of avenues can we take? You know, like, can we make gigantic sculptures? Can we make parade floats? Can we make a theme park?
Oh, parade float.
Theme park. Yeah.
Well,
but yeah, the parade float first, then theme park. But yeah, I guess that's my answer.
I think for me, they do kind of embody me. They are kind of autobiographical in a way, but it's a little more oblique than that. I think it's more like, well, especially now that I'm doing this full time, what they are is a fabulous excuse to pursue all of the weird little niche obsessions that I have. So, like, I love old fabric. Like, they're kind of anachronistic, and they kind of exist in this unnamed time, which is somewhere between like the 1880s and the 1940s. So they kind of like embody that whole, it was obviously a time that I never lived in. And I have this weird thing that I don't even know what it is, where I feel like it's like a nostalgia for something I've never experienced. And I don't have the ruby tinted glasses that is like, I think that like, oh, it was a golden era where everything was simple. And no, I know that people, you know, like, you know, no rights for women, you know, there's all kinds of stuff that I'm really, really like. I love technology. Like, I'm learning how to edit video, and I'm really having a good time with it. I love my iPhone. I love being able to have conveniences. Like, modern medicine is pretty awesome. So I don't long to be a part of it, but there are things about kind of antique throwback things that I really, really appreciate. I really appreciate the beautiful handset type and really gorgeous lettering and layouts of a lot of old advertisements. I really appreciate the kind of like silly domesticity and kind of this romanticism around like, you know, perfect entertaining and make this lovely little dessert. And I don't know, there's a lot of kind of goofy, weird things that I'm really, really obsessed with. And being able to work them into my art allows me to appreciate them. Like, oh, for this, I get to make a tiny dining room table with tiny furniture. This is going to be amazing because it's something I want to do anyway. But now I can do it for a living, And I think in turn, I can share it with people who are also like, oh my God, you made a tiny dining room table with tiny furniture. That's so cool. So I don't know. It's great. I get to just kind of be a little kid and explore the things that I want to explore and have a reason for it. Not that you have to have a reason, but it makes you feel a little less frivolous. It makes you feel a little less silly pursuing what are really frivolous and silly things, but for a good reason. So that's why I've taught myself embroidery and what else? What other weird? I know that there's a million of them that I've had to learn and do. I've learned a lot about newspaper setup because, okay, so I do this thing where on Patreon I have this kind of thing of the month club where every month I'll send some of my patrons these, they're like art packages. And one of the things that they get is this kind of it's like a letter from a fictitious version of the Dust Bunnies workshop where it's set at, again, sometime between the late 1800s and the 1950s, but I get to make a newspaper. So
that's so
make
cool.
a clipping from a newspaper. So I figured how would they lay out a newspaper in the 30s? What kind of articles would they write? What's the halftone line screen that I need to be using for the photo? And then actually buying newsprint, cutting it to size, feeding it through my printer, stripping in some ads in the back and then cutting out the recipe or whatever so that it actually looks like it's from a newspaper. It's silly. It's stupid. It's probably a waste of time, but I love it. And that's, I don't know. It gives me a reason to share my crazy obsessions with other like-minded people who also appreciate crazy obsessions. Did that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Okay.
And I think hearing you say it's stupid and it's a waste of time, I think about all the things that we loved as kids. That if you thought about Frank Oz and Jim Henson standing there behind a set
with their arm
up a puppet, dancing around and singing, you would think that that's the dumbest thing you could make a living
at. But that informed my life as a kid.
Almost everything that we did. So, without those things that we think that it might be a little crazy, I don't think we'd be where we are.
You have to be a little crazy and a little silly and be willing to be a little frivolous. I think that's really, really important. You can't take yourself, even people who take themselves very seriously, there's got to be a part of them that doesn't. That's kind of this is ridiculous. You have to, or else you'll go crazy.
For sure. And I think you both nailed it with your answers because I'm interested in outer space and why? I've never taken a course in astronomy. It's just an interest, but I like to incorporate it in my writing and my music videos. And, you're right. It's almost like an excuse to be able to explore this thing that I'm interested in that nobody else wants to really talk about.
Right.
But I think it's so important to latch onto that. And I think it's almost a responsibility to do it. Like you said, any type of creative thing can seem frivolous. Any type of creative thing can seem silly and not worth anything, but it's so important because you have no idea that the amount of people that are interested in that but are not brave enough to kind of explore it, and you get to do that for them almost.
Exactly. And think about all the people that you've run across that you've been oh my gosh, this person's doing this. This is amazing. It's the other way around at that point. You're the one getting inspired by somebody else's crazy obsession. It's important.
Absolutely. And Chris, you mentioned the amount of Instagram followers that you have, and you both have a decent following. Has that ever affected your creativity? Has that ever kind of made you second guess what you're creating, or has it been kind of you can put the blinders on and be able to step away from that while you're actually creating?
I think it helps, honestly. I mean, for a lot of creative people that I've known in my life, we all have sort of a self-esteem issue, because what you're doing is you're putting an extension of yourself out into the world and asking people to like it.
It's vulnerable.
Sure.
So the fact that people do like it, I think it energizes you a little bit, and energizes me anyway. It's not the most important thing, but it definitely helps. I mean, I remember a time when I was at Comic-Con for, I think, one of the first times, and for a signing, and nobody showed up. And, that was a bummer. It was nothing short of a bummer. But then, when we released our toy series a couple of years ago, we
had lines for hours.
We thought we were going to sign for an hour, and we ended up signing for 3 hours plus, and we would have signed for longer if we didn't need to take a bathroom break.
Yeah.
And
which is really humbling.
And it's super humbling, and that definitely, I mean, you want your things to succeed, and having that amount of eyes on your work and getting, pretty much nothing but positive comments. It's you can feed on it. I think you can lose sight of that pretty quickly. I think you can be like, I've seen people get annoyed by getting too many comments and stuff. It's like, wow, that's a gift, man.
Yeah.
Like it's awesome to be able to have a dialogue with a stranger about the dumb thing you
Who's
made.
stoked on your work.
Yeah, like that's awesome. That's what you wanted, and like there's always this sort of stereotype of artists that like, oh, it's not real art if it's done for an audience, like that.
Sure it is.
Whatever.
It totally is.
I have a job to do. My art is my job. And I want to do it well. And if I'm not doing it well, nobody's buying it or looking at it. So the fact that people are looking at it, I'm pretty happy about that. So I think that's sort of my mindset in terms of followers and social media.
Cool. All right, guys. I'm so sorry for holding you for so long, but it's time.
Hey.
It's time for the final push.
All right.
And this is where I ask you both to kind of reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today and just give them your best words of advice and really push them to pursue their creative passions.
I think one of the things that, when I was in college, appropriately, when I was 23 years old and knew everything, I had a big chip on my shoulder about what was good and what I wanted to do and that my work was good. And deep down, I knew my work was where it was. If I looked around and looked at what everybody else was doing and where I wanted to be, if I was really honest with myself, I knew that I had a lot of work to do. And I think that being honest with yourself about your work and what you need to work on and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and being willing to work on that. Just know that, like it's okay to put stuff out if it's not perfect, but it's better to know that you need to keep working. And also another thing is, I think we touched on this earlier, is like, don't say, oh, I wish I could draw like that, or I wish I could paint like that, or I wish I could sculpt like that. That wishing got nobody nowhere, it's except for, Pinocchio. But, but actually that's a really good metaphor if you think about it, like he had to go through all this crap to become a real boy, but, I'm losing track of what I was saying, but, if you say, oh, I wish that's not going to do anything for you. You just got to put your head down and start working. And I always had this stock answer when everybody said like, oh, how did you get to where you are? And I said, well, no Xbox, no friends. That's what I would always say. And like, don't, on Friday night, where are you at? Are you out drinking with your friends, or are you in your studio working on your passion, working on what is important to you? And if you're not, maybe that's not important to you, and that's okay too. But like really put your head down and put the work in. That's the only way you're going to get results. And I also use the metaphor of like, people say, well, how did you lose all that weight? And they expect, what they want to hear is, well, I took a pill and I closed my eyes and I woke up and I was thin. And that's not how it works. And the answer is always, well, diet and exercise. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear hard work over a long period of time. And it sucks. Like, nobody wants to hear that. So I think the same thing can be applied to skill and art. Put in the work, put in the time, and it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be hard sometimes. But day by day, in small chunks and small increments, you will get better. And the goal is not to end up in a place in your life. The goal is to get better and progress until you can no longer create art.
Wow.
Like if I'm 90 and I'm not ahead of where I am now, then I failed at some point, So I think it's just always know that you're always going to be progressing, and every day you're going to be as good as you are that day, and then the next day you'll be better.
Yeah, it's time and effort, and also a sacrifice of other things. Like something has to go that in your life if you're not where you're at, where you want to be, specifically with creativity, or even losing weight, or it's all about the time and the effort. And I think people are sometimes not willing to sacrifice. They want that magic pill,
right,
to get them to point B, but you have to go through point A first.
Yeah. I think I would say along those lines, while you're, so what we've learned from Chris is, but in order to if you're like me, and I suspect that some people are, if you're like me and you're like, yes, yeah, work, I can do that, I can do this. And then you just can't. You can't get off the couch. You can't, for whatever reason. I would say, do what you can to demystify the creative process. Because I think we often kind of put it up on this pedestal, and you feel like, well, when I find the inspiration, I'll be ready. Or, you sit down at your desk and you've got all of your pencils, or you've got, your music editing software in front of you, or whatever. And you're like, now is the time. The time is like, it just becomes this like weird congruence of things that has to happen in order for you to feel ready. And that's really, really not going to work for you. I think what it needs to be is take something that you do every day, like writing an email or brushing your teeth or doing the dishes, and try to figure out, like, it's like you need to make the creative process a little more pedestrian. I know that sounds so counterintuitive, but I feel like if you don't have a hard time cleaning up after dinner, why is that? Like, the more you do things like that, the more you work creative, like your creative expression into your everyday life, little by little in little bits, the more it won't take you to like, well, I got to work up the gumption and the feeling to do this. Don't go by feelings. Just do it. Just do that thing. Drag, like I did this morning, drag your laptop to the kitchen table when you're drinking your coffee first thing in the morning, and just sit and edit those things that you need to edit. And that's not hard. You don't have to be in a sacred space for that. The sacred creativity will come, but it'll only come when you're already doing that thing. Because if you want it to appear at that specific time, but you haven't readied the stage with your skill and everything for it to come, it'll pass you by. So be ready just by doing it a lot, and that'll make it less mysterious, and it'll make you more comfortable with it. And it won't feel like you have to climb a mountain every single time you have an idea. You don't have to climb a mountain. You just have to take a jog up that hill and you're there. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, making it more pedestrian. I like that. And kind of building on that, also, like, as you do start doing it, and as you do kind of start going along the path, I think a lot of people think that it's going to feel different. And I don't know from your guys' experience if it does feel different but for me, it's like, I'm 150 something episodes into the podcast, but I still feel like the same person, I don't, yeah. But back in episode 0, I couldn't imagine being to this point. I couldn't imagine having the people listening and being inspired by it, but it still feels the same, and right. I think, that can be disheartening for people. They think it's supposed to feel this amazing feeling of, oh, I achieved it. I got there. Right. But I think the finish line always keeps moving if you're doing it right, if you're progressing, and to be ready for that, to not be discouraged by the fact that you don't necessarily feel like you've won the game. If that makes sense.
But I think the thing that you can examine there is the fact that on your first podcast, you probably weren't as comfortable talking. You probably didn't have as good a questions because you didn't have the experience talking to people. And, with that much experience now, you're probably way more comfortable doing what you're doing. Like, I always say that now, because I've drawn so much over my life and I've drawn so many things, it's like my superpower. Like, it's one thing I know I'm really good at that I can say, somebody says, well, draw a train. I can draw a train. Sure. Like, I don't even think about like, oh man, that's going to be really hard. It's like, I'm there's the one thing I'm really good at, and I wouldn't be good at it if I didn't practice at it. And it was like I was saying before, it's small increments. It's what Amanda was saying about, like, it can be really daunting to get the perfect time to do things. If you just work on something for an hour a day, at the end of the week, you worked on it for 7 hours.
That's a lot.
That's a whole lot. But
it's like a work day.
Hour a day is an episode of Game of Thrones.
Right.
And even if you're working a full-time job, like, you know, people have different lives. People have kids. It gets busy. And I totally understand that. But if you can carve out a little bit of time every day, it's going to accumulate. It's going to accumulate as much as all those things that you're putting off are accumulating. Like, I'm thinking about, like, oh, we got to paint the basement steps. Like, all those things that we're putting them off, but in their place, we're often doing creative things. So I guess you just have to pick what you want to accumulate.
Absolutely. And yeah, it is important to then look back as you're, you know, putting your head down and just getting the work done every single day, to look back to what you did a year ago. Like you said, episode 1, I actually republished it because nobody listened to it back then. And it was one of the hardest things I had to do because I sound terrible. Like, I'm just like so uncomfortable, so nervous. And you're right. Like, I did miss some good questions. But it's important to do that, to look back and to see the progress that you made. And I think that is the most inspiring thing you can do.
Well, and the more you do it too, like your barriers for the creativity to get in there become less and less, like Chris with the train. Like,
right.
You know, now if part of that project is to draw a train, if it were me, that would stop me dead, because I'd be like, I don't know how to draw a train. Like, just figuring that out is enough to make me stop. But if I've drawn so much that drawing a train is literally no big deal, I'd be like, oh, I can start on this. And then the creativity can flow. Like, I think that we've got a lot of blocks that you have to break down, and you have to give the creativity like a way that it can get through. Because if it's up against all these things you don't know how to do, you're going to have a really hard time.
Absolutely. Oh, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show and for giving us that push. And you can find Amanda and Chris on their website, bindlewood.com, BINDLEWOOD.com. You can find them on Instagram, Amanda Louise Spayd and Chris Ryniak, and we will have all those links to everything we talked about at our show notes page, yourcreativepush.com/155. Guys, thank you so much.
Oh, yay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, how great was that? Thank you again to Chris and Amanda. Guys, the F it moment. Sometimes you just have to put something forth, put something out there rather than endlessly perfecting it. And this can be very tough to do, to let your baby, to let this piece of you out into the public for everyone to, well, at least in your mind, scoff at it and see all the little flaws that you didn't have enough time to polish and tweak and get just right. But if you're a perfectionist like I am, you know that no matter how many times you tweak certain things, they'll never be exactly right. And you'll spend so much time on the most minute detail. And like Amanda said, nobody will notice that except for you, which is why deadlines are so important, especially self-imposed deadlines, because they force you to just ship, to just let go of those minor things that you can't quite polish perfectly, so that you can just put it out there and then move on, not just with your life, but move on to the next creative thing. So just focus on that this weekend. If you have that same kind of problem, just keep creating, keep moving on, don't get stuck. Force yourself to ship, force yourself to put stuff out there, and just move on. But that is all I've got for you today. Hopefully you were inspired. I know that you were inspired by this double episode. So thank you so much for listening, and we will be here for you all next week if you need the push again. I love you all, and we will see you then. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.